And after 18 years of doing cost segregation studies, we've done thousands. People are still kind of leery or unknown, or they haven't heard about it yet, which kind of blows my mind.
Welcome to the Freedom Point Real Estate Podcast, where we talk about creating more time freedom through passive real estate investing. Passive investing in real estate challenges conventional investment wisdom. We are passionate about learning and sharing resources with others who are ready to transform their investing mindset. Quick disclaimer as always, I am not a CPA, I am not an attorney or a financial advisor. This is not financial advice, not telling you or anyone else what to do. The views and opinions expressed in these podcasts are provided for education and informational purposes only and are not necessarily the views of my employer, ADP. I'm glad you're here. Now let's dig in.
All right, welcome back, Freedom Point Podcast listeners. Thank you again for jumping into another episode of the Freedom Point. I'm your host, Jeremy Dyer. Have another amazing guest with me today. Actually, a guest that I've really wanted to have on our show for quite some time now. As most of those that listen to our podcast and know me personally, I do generally tend to have conversations with investors related to the tax benefits of real estate investing. And you've probably heard me throw around the words cost segregation study, bonus depreciation, passive, losses. And so I brought on the one and the only Terry Judge. Terry, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here, man. Great to see you, Jeremy. Great to reconnect. I'm looking forward to this.
Absolutely. Likewise. And before we get to chopping it up here, I'd like to give my listening audience a little bit of background on you, Terry. Terry has an extensive entrepreneurial background with over 25 years in the business. He is one of the very early adopters of engineering cost-based segregation studies, as well as other highly specialized tax credits to help people maximize cash flow and take advantage of the ever-changing tax code. So, Terry, before we get too far into the weeds on what a cost segregation study is, why it's of benefit to the operator, why it's of benefit to the limited partner investors that are choosing to invest, their hard-earned money into those opportunities, maybe you can give us a little bit more on your background and what you're currently focused on today.
Yeah, for sure. So, serial entrepreneur, started businesses in my early 20s, did a variety of different things, but I ended up getting into the deregulation of telecom. That was really my first consultant agency, so to speak, here in Michigan. I'm born and raised in Michigan, go blue. And then from there, I always had this knack for helping businesses reduce cost. And for whatever reason, I've always kind of landed in this cost savings world. I just never thought I would end up in the tax savings world. That really kind of one thing led to another, and it found me. And I got into, somebody introduced me to cost seg. It really just kind of fell in my lap. But for some reason, I was intrigued, and I started to do research. I just found that it was a massive, kind of a, I hate to use the word loophole, but it was, let's use more of a niche in the tax code that was very underutilized. I did a lot of due diligence before we actually started the company that we'll get into, but I ended up talking to many CPAs locally, small, medium, and large CPA firms here. And what I found was that nobody was talking about this strategy, this service. And I was actually blown away. So my entrepreneurial juices kicked in. I ended up partnering with a guy from the old Arthur Andersen days who, obviously, for those of you, maybe you got some young listeners too. Maybe you're like, who? But the old big massive CPA firm that went down, Arthur Andersen. So we joined. We kind of locked arms. He already was a CPA by training. He ran he was in the cost seg division of that company. So it was just timing. We kind of met, and we really ran from there. And we expanded nationwide. It was a time thing, where all of these, whether you're buying your first duplex or you're a seasoned operator where you had thousands of doors, it was just seemed like it was the same conversation. When I said cost segregation, they're like, cost who? What are you talking about? And I would get into it, and they're like, no, my CPA's never told me this. This is too good to be true. That was the language I used to hear back in the day. Now it's pretty mainstream. I mean, if you don't know about cost seg, you've been living under a rock. Most CPAs love this strategy. They just do not do it in-house to this day. And the reason being is that you have to have an engineering background. And by the way, my schooling was mechanical engineering, so I have a weird brain. And then you need obviously the accounting piece. And then there's also been over 300 court cases and 300 memorandums and IRS rulings over the course of years. So you really you need to understand tax law, not just accounting and depreciation, right? Every CPA loves and understands depreciation, but they don't understand the tax law that drives this. And then there's a big engineering piece. And that's why it's so fragmented. And that's why this is such an afterthought. And after 18 years of doing cost segregation studies, we've done thousands. It's still kind of this, people are still kind of leery or unknown, or they haven't heard about it yet, which kind of blows my mind. So anyways, that was the short, hopefully, answer to that question.
Yeah, no, good background there. Really
Yeah.
appreciate that. So let's really jump into it. Let's chop this up a little bit. So, my knowledge of cost segregation studies, is essentially, you hire an engineering firm that comes in, and most of my investments and my investors invest in multifamily,
Yep.
value add, right? So there's this third party, company, like yourself that comes in, and you're going to use IRS rules to really depreciate all the different material elements of the property. The land can't be depreciated, but the roof can, the appliances can, the flooring can, right? And the IRS has certain rules in place that allow a different schedule to be used for each of those material elements. The flooring might be, 12 years, and the appliances are 7, something like that, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
maybe talk us through the semantics of, I guess number one, why do operators, hire somebody like you to come in and perform this cost segregation study? There must be a benefit to them, and there must be a benefit to their investors, or they wouldn't do it. And then secondly, what are kind of the ABCs, of how you arrive at, the end result?
Yeah, so first and foremost, we are we're a specialty tax firm. We're an advisory firm. We're not a CPA firm, although I have a CPA on my staff. And so we do these deep dive analysis, and essentially like exactly what you said. So the IRS has all of these different kind of timetables of what can be written off in the early life. So before I get into that, what I want to preface is that in the United States, there's the main method, which is called the straight line method, and that is a method that every CPA in the country uses. So when you buy Jeremy, when you buy a building, and according to the straight line method, okay, that building is going to depreciate. If it's multifamily, it has a 27.5 year life. All other asset classes have a 39-year life. And that basically means that the IRS says, okay, this building is going to wear out over 27.5 years. Well, incomes back in the late 60s, okay, so literally in the late 60s, early 70s, there was something that was put in the tax code. It was called cost segregation. It's gone through many different flavors. The IRS actually terminated the program in '86 during the tax reform, and then it came back in the mid '90s, where really nobody knew it came back. And basically, what the IRS says now is that you can take a building, you break it apart into 9 different units or 9 different buckets. I don't need to go into all 9, but just essentially all the main components of a building, from the interior and the exterior. And we are allowed, now you have to hire, a specialty tax firm like CORE to come in and really do this forensic deep dive analysis that will break down each of these components. And they are what you said. And so just think of your interior of a build out when you walk into a multifamily property, or you walk into a senior living, or a funeral home or office building, right? There's a lot of cool finishes, and there's flooring, and there's carpet, and there's fixtures, and there's drop ceilings, and there's electrical, and all this stuff. The IRS basically says now most of those components on the interior of a building has a 5-year life, not a 39-year life or a 27.5 year life. You just have to understand what component. This is where it gets really kind of muddy or messier, because a CPA is not going to know. They're not driving their car and going out to the building and being able to identify different components that can be written off. That's what we do as a company, and we're able to identify lighting, plumbing, fixtures, flooring, like I said. And then when we get into the exterior, it could be parking lots, curbs, drainage systems, fencing, underground electrical, all of the things that make up land does not depreciate, but land improvements depreciate. And therefore, on all the exterior, the IRS basically says through these new kind of provisions in the tax code that, hey, wait a minute, we're going to allow the land to be written off over 15 years. And then the interior, we're going to allow it to be written off over a 5-year period. And therefore, what that basically does is it compresses or front loads all of that depreciation that you would have to normally wait for. And then what the investor gets to do is take that depreciation and use it against income in multiple areas. And we can talk about kind of how all that works. So it really becomes this cash infusion where you can reduce your ordinary income tax through depreciation. And the ultimate goal of this whole strategy is time value of money. A dollar today is worth more than a dollar down the road, especially in the time that we are in right now, the inflationary time. Our dollar is getting eaten up. So depreciation becomes so powerful as a tool. And a lot of times, again, it's not really being fully utilized in the community of real estate investing, right? So I like to kind of teach people like, okay, you got this style of building, you got this style of building. We can come in and you can expect, a 40% write-off off of your purchase price. And now we could do it in year one. We can talk about bonus depreciation as well and how that's impacted the law over the last, several years. They've gone crazy over bonus depreciation, especially in your world, Jeremy, where, you've got your GPs, you've got your LPs, where they're going to get more of a bigger bang for the buck when they put their money into an investment. They're going to be able to take more time value of money and be able to use it in today's dollars. I always like to use the analogy of, okay, why in the world would you let the IRS hold on to your money for, let's call it 30 years, right? Where you can put it in your pocket today and grow the empire. So I'll just pause there and take a breath.
Yeah, no, that's good. I appreciate that. And I definitely think the same, way as you do as well. It almost kind of feels like with the depreciation, benefits that I personally receive, investing as a passive investor and even an active investor, in real estate, then I'm essentially able to use, I'm basically taking a loan from the IRS at a 0% rate to then invest that dollar, multiple times into other cash flowing investments. So it definitely has a compounding effect.
Yeah.
I do have a couple of kind of basic level questions that I've been kind of grappling in my mind, that I know my listening audience is going to appreciate, me asking. But that is, so in a value add multifamily or a value add commercial real estate building, the sponsor is going to acquire the asset. And maybe they look to renovate, 100% of the classic interior units. Maybe they look to, put in some additional amenities, some upgrades for the tenants. Does that depreciation schedule restart on a unit, kind of post, renovation, so that accelerated depreciation schedule and timeline effectively resets once they've renovated a unit?
So, okay, great question. That's a loaded one. So we take it in different steps. We take it in different phases. So and then another variable is what tax year does the renovations get completed in? So that could be another tax year. So there is something called date in service on all of your components. But let's talk about the actual purchase. Okay, and this could also be new construction. But let's just talk about an acquisition first. So we call that the as-built. So our engineers we want to get to that building as soon as the new ownership takes it. Okay, and you're getting it all set up. Your investors are already on board. They're looking for this nice tax savings. So we want to go in there, and the reason why we want to get in there before the renovations start. First of all, we want to identify everything that's already in there, and then we want to know what's coming out. So this is something that's interesting. The IRS, there's something else called what we build into our studies is what's called the partial asset disposition report. And we are going to be able to identify what is coming out. So it could be the kitchens are coming out, the cabinets are coming out, the flooring's coming out, the electrical's coming out. Everything pretty much in a unit is going to be, renovated and refreshed. Maybe the landscape is going to be, redone and refreshed. So we want to identify what's going to be being ripped out. And the IRS basically says there's real values on even those assets that are going to be disposed, and technically they're going to be, zero value, but in the terms of your depreciation schedules, those assets really have a full life. It could be a 5-year life, could be a 39-year life, or 27.5-year life. We're talking about multifamily, so 27.5-year life. And we can calculate what those values are, and then we can add that into the overall depreciation. So as built, number one. Number two is the partial asset disposition, which is going to be pre-renovation. And then phase 3 is when the finishes are all done. We're going to go in there and then finish our study. It depends on, and people say, well, sometimes our clients will be like, we need depreciation in tax year, let's say, call it 2023. We want all the depreciation for tax year 23 on the purchase. We're going to worry about the depreciation on the renovations at a later date. So we'll come back in and do like a piggyback study, or we'll finish it up at the end. Everything is going to be accounted for. It just depends on when those renovations were started and then when they were finished.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
Now, here's another kind of question that I've been thinking a lot about. So I've been a limited partner investor since 2015, and I know that as it gets towards the latter half of the year and into the fourth quarter, sometimes there's this additional incentive, to invest, towards the end of a calendar year, because of the cost segregation study that's going to be performed on that asset. And then me as a limited partner investor, I have my pro rata share, depreciation benefit, but I'm actually getting that benefit, not pro rata according to the time in which the acquisition was completed, but I'm actually getting it for the entire year. So why is that the case?
Well, you're getting it because bonus depreciation is allowing all of this front-loaded depreciation in year one. And that's still the case, although 24. Well, I'll get into that, the 20% reduction, but each year. But hopefully that'll be reversed. I'll talk about that as well if you want me to. So you're basically all the LPs, the investors are coming in. Let's say they're going to invest $100,000. Let's say they own 1.5 or 2% of the asset. They get their full share, their prorated share of ownership, but they're going to get all of the depreciation. They don't have to wait and spread it out over time. Now they might not, there's going to be, there could be spillover, because it is, when you're a passive investor, you're going to be able to take the depreciation from that asset and you're going to be able to offset the income. So it's a paper loss on paper. When you get your K1, you still made you're going to earn the distributions, but your depreciation is going to offset whatever income that asset is now kicking off to you. So it's a beautiful thing. You get the best of both worlds. You get your income from the distribution, and then you get your share of whatever ownership that you have. Some people are putting in more than $100,000. Some people are putting in less. So your sponsor will let you know, okay, you're putting in $50,000. You're going to get X amount of ownership, and then that gets spread out amongst all of the investors equally. But you're going to be able to get all of it if in year one, or the bigger chunk of it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I want to save the bonus depreciation question for a little bit later here, but I did want to ask you another question that oftentimes comes up with our investors, and that is as it relates to those individuals that maybe have single family homes that they rent out, or Airbnb properties. At what point does it make sense for that individual to have a cost segregation study done on their own single family, rental portfolio, versus maybe the juice is not worth the squeeze?
Yeah, it's a great question. So because of bonus, we'll talk about that in a minute. But so, we're now doing cost seg studies. It used to be like our minimum was $1 million and above, right? So that really kind of took out some of the smaller folks that have maybe a couple single families or maybe a couple duplexes. But now, $300,000 is pretty juicy in terms of tax savings. Somebody that, now you can't have your primary resident considered as to get a study done. It's only real estate investment property. So if you do have a portfolio, let's say 2 or 3 or more, we're working with a gentleman right now. He's got 185 homes, and he's never done cost seg because he just never thought there was any value there. We ran the numbers; he couldn't believe it. And so he's a real estate professional. So that gets into some other active and passive rules. But but some just make to shorten it up, it's just if you have a residential investment property or an Airbnb property somewhere, we will be glad to offer a feasibility analysis just to show you in black and white what that tax savings would be. A lot of people are kind of shocked.
Yeah, I could definitely believe that. And I'm sure there's plenty of people that are listening to this episode that maybe are kicking themselves for having not, reached out or consulted with, a cost seg engineer. So really appreciate you sharing that wisdom. What would you say are maybe one or two different misconceptions, that property owners have about cost segregation?
Well, one we can just touch on because you just triggered something in my brain is that let's say you had a property, maybe you've had a property for 10 years and you've never done a cost seg study on it, and you never really you never knew you could go back. So we could go back in time, by the way. The IRS will allow one-time provision. It's a one-time automatic consent. We can go back in time. We'll go back 10 years and we'll redo all the depreciation, including renovations, and we'll get to carry it forward into the current tax year. And then that has a 20-year carry forward from that date forward. Now that is called a 481 adjustment. That's a change in accounting. Your CPA typically will kick the can because they're not familiar with the form. They don't really know how to figure it out or fill it out. We handle everything in house. We just do it on their behalf, and that 481 adjustment goes right along with their tax return. So we will obviously work directly with their CPA and make all that kind of happen. So that it's a beautiful thing. You don't have to amend tax returns going back in time. So there is no loss. We can go back in time and pick it up.
That's great. Let's talk about bonus depreciation now. So as I kind of understand it, back in 2012, there was this Jobs and Tax Act that was passed, which allowed for 100% bonus depreciation to be applied. And then a couple of years ago, there was this kind of scaled down effort, or it would go down to 80%, in 2023, in 2024, now it's down to 60%. It's set to come down again further next year, 40/20, and then scale off. So let's talk a little bit about that in the lens of, the other discussion on the more the political side of, the House and the Senate, kind of grappling back and forth the potential of bringing bonus depreciation back again at 100%. And maybe what's your crystal ball tell you there?
Yeah. So it actually kicked in 2017 officially. 2017, September 27th, 2017 is really when it activated. So any purchases after that date, you at that point qualified for 100% bonus depreciation. And that all that really means is, remember we discussed your 5-year property is your interior, your 15-year property is your exterior. The IRS basically says, screw all that. We're going to let you compress it into year one now. Everything gets pushed into year one. So everyone's just like, wow, that's fantastic. So that went from 17 till about 2022. You were able to get 100%. Last year in 23, it went down to 80% bonus, okay, which is still fantastic. And then in 24, this year, any purchases, acquisitions made this year, you're going to get 60% of it up front. Now, you don't lose the other 40%. Okay, the other 40% just gets spread out over the normal 5 and 15-year buckets. Okay, so that's I just want to clarify, because people say, well, what happens to the other 40%? It just gets spread out, so you don't lose it. It's just you're getting 60% of it up front. Now, to go back to what you said too on the kind of the political standpoint, so it has been passed in Congress. It is bipartisan that they want to bring it back. It's already been approved. There was a change in the Senate, and therefore it had to go back to the Senate to make this change. Unfortunately, anytime there's a change in a tax bill, it takes forever. So we've been waiting on this and biting our nails and sending out email newsletters and letting everybody know that, hey, good news, 100% bonus is coming back retro to 2023. And then, which means everybody's kind of still in 23 tax year technically, because a lot of people have filed extensions and they're still working on wrapping up 23 tax year. I know I filed an extension this year and kind of waiting for that to kick back in. So we don't know if it's going to happen honestly in 24 or 25. All we do know is it's been approved. It's bipartisan. Everybody wants it back. It really helped the economy. The IRS and the Congress, they really are. They really want to help this affordable housing crisis that we do have in our country. There's so many people that cannot afford to get their own home today, and therefore they have to rent somewhere. And that's why multifamily is still going to be an amazing asset class for who knows how long, right? It could just keep continue because there's such a shortage where people are going to live. And right now, the banks are locking down. It's harder for a family to get a mortgage, and so that's where we're at with that. So it's all good news. It's all exciting. Again, cost seg has been one of those strategies that have outlived whatever Democrat, Republican, administration. It's the gift that keeps on giving. It's been around for a long time.
Yeah, I would say the majority of politicians are also real estate
Yeah,
investors. So that certainly helps the cause there. I
correct.
want to get personal with you for a minute,
Yeah.
and that is as it relates to you're being a firm believer in giving back to the community. Can you tell us about the local charities in your area that you support and why those causes are important to you?
Yeah. So I started something called Synergy Detroit, and it's my charity organization. We've been doing this for about 4 or 5 years now. We raise money for local charities. The one that we're really passionate about, the one I have an upcoming event June 13th. If anybody's in the Detroit area, maybe I can share my email and love to have you. We're hosting it at a really cool venue, and we've got it's called New Hope. It is a awesome charity. It is for people that we've all been affected by cancer. Somebody in our family, and it's every family's been affected. I mean, everybody's knows somebody that's suffered. So this organization comes in and they really help out financially, because when someone's comes down with cancer, depending upon what type, sometimes they're missing work, they can't work anymore. Medical bills are crazy, you know, what have you. So this organization will come in, pay for mortgages, pay for the cars, pay for the utilities, pay for groceries. They really get their arms around the family, and they really care about the family. So, matter of fact, the founder I went to high school with, and I was at a golf outing, and she's up there speaking about this thing. I'm in tears about the stories, and I look up, I said, Gina. And I graduated with her. She started this amazing organization, and I said, "You're going to be at my next charity." And so we're raising money, and we donate 100% of it. So that's what I do. I try to host these cool events and bring people together. And we have a board, and we try to do something about 3 times a year. We try to do 4, but it's really tough. So we're probably about 3 times a year, and that's super fun. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. Well, thank you for your work there for sure.
Yeah.
What's maybe next for Terry? Personally, professionally, what you have any additional items left on your to-do list for 2024 and beyond?
Well, personally, I like to golf, so I'm definitely looking to go play Pebble Beach. That is high on the to-do list. And I'm Irish, so I've never been to Ireland, and I never played in the Scotland courses. So that's something that I'm really looking to lock down. I don't know if it's going to happen in 24, because these courses, sometimes it takes a year of planning just to get there. But anyways, so that's on the personal level. My for business. I do love to travel, so that's all part of that bucket list adventure. I try to do something big once a year. Did a Croatia thing last year, and it was pretty awesome. But business wise, I am just more interested in investing and possibly developing. I'm looking to be a partner in some flex space here in Michigan. And I'm a partner in a hotel going up, a ground up hotel. And I'm also now an investor in a high end daycare, which I'm really passionate about, because everything that's happening with our school systems, these are just phenomenal. They're great investments. So I'm super stoked. These are both ground up. So, it takes time to stabilize. I haven't seen a nickel yet, but I'm thinking in 25, we'll be rocking and rolling. So that's something I want to get more into. Keep growing core. We try to constantly add value for our clients. We offer other tax incentives, other strategies, energy incentives, land allocation studies now, so we can drive the cost of the land down, which offers more depreciation on the upside. and just keep doing what I'm doing and trying to get my golf handicap lower.
Sounds good. Well, we'll talk off camera about my trip to Ireland last year, and we
Oh
played
man,
at the Adair Manor, which is where the Ryder Cup is going to be here in a little bit. So
man, you're
quite
teasing me.
the course. But that said, I would like to, before we go, I would like to have you give our listening audience maybe a couple of different ways that we can reach out to you if we want to learn more, connect with you, etc.
Yeah, honestly, I think the best way to get a hold of me, I'm on all the social, Facebook, I'm Terry T. Judge, and on Instagram, LinkedIn. You can look up, Core Solutions Group is our company. But really the best way, I'll give you my email if you can put it in the chat somewhere. That's really the best way to reach out to me is email. I'll get back to you fairly quickly, usually within 24 hours. But so it's just my name. So it's Terry Judge, Judge, at Core Advisors with ORS at the end, advisors.net. Yeah, shoot me an email and we're happy to help. We do a lot of pro bono on free analysis, free feasibility studies. If you have properties, you have questions, we're happy to do a free consult and help you out the best we can.
That's great. Well, we'll put your email address in the show notes for the episode. And
Perfect.
Terry, I really appreciated you joining me on the show today.
Jeremy, it's great seeing you, man. I enjoyed it.
Absolutely. And listening audience, thank you again for jumping into another episode of The Freedom Point. We look forward to having you join us on the next episode.
Thank you for hanging out with us today and for listening to the Freedom Point podcast, powered by Starting Point Capital. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Nothing said on this show should be considered financial advice. Before making any financial decision, please consult with a professional. This show is copyrighted by the Freedom Point podcast. Written permissions must be granted before syndication or rebroadcasting. If you're interested in connecting, you can find contact information at startingpointcapital.com.